Hello everybody and welcome back. Last episode we had our first character death and I cannot tell you just how much that has really pissed me off. Yeah, more than it should have done. For some reason I had hoped that my little starting group of people here would make it through all the way to level 14. These little people with their little problems would become heroes. I mean, that is possible because you have level 14 rules, therefore you have to be able to make it to level 14. I did say right at the beginning that the odds of everybody making it through to the end was unlikely and a lot of character development will go to the grave. The reality hit harder. I think I'm maybe just too sentimental for this game, and what a game. The bizarre thing is, I didn't actually spot it until I was recharging my battery. Had I just played on, what would I have done? I may have picked it up in the editing, but by that time, everybody would have moved on. Well, maybe he would have died this episode. And I really was so tempted to ignore it, to just act like it didn't happen. I've made mistakes before, with a +1 here or there, didn't really make much difference. I was also tempted to play the nice DM who rolls dice behind a screen and declares that critical hits really missed. I was also thinking, what if he recovered 2 health while I slept rather than 1, because he just needed that 1. But no, if you roll dice merely to get the results you want, well then you don't have any game. Okay, so that's done. So poor Ben. His character sheet goes off to the great folder in the sky. Well, it's a bit of a setback for everybody else. What do they think? Sylvia, she really liked Ben. She stayed in his house. He was a bit boorish and overbearing, maybe a bit of a show-off with his money. But that was just his attempt to be generous and good-natured. And well, as far as Sylvia is concerned, Ben just didn't have the skills required to be good in a world that really doesn't value goodness. So she's quite caught up about it. Donard is angry. He thinks he failed at healing. The only conclusion is that sure enough there must have been some sort of a spear tip embedded in Ben and it spent the next few hours working its way to his heart, even though he seemed healthy. Whatever vengeance Donard is trying to exorcise within himself has actually not alleviated, it's probably doubled, and he wants to raise the whole of the Caves of Chaos. He has seen a lot of death before, but normally he's hung around with people who either died because of their own stupidity or their own cruelty, such as people getting drunk in a bar fight and getting stabbed, or else people committing dangerous crimes, being caught and then executed. So he's got a lot to think about. Liz didn't really know him that well. She never liked him in Threshold, but she had grown to like him, and she also admired the way he looked after her brother Malin. Malin is probably the worst affected. Him and Ben had become good friends, and also Ben had often taken a firm hand with Malin if he saw him wandering off the straight and narrow path, and there is a lot about Malin that could go wrong. If you look at the little party we have, well, Liz is his sister. Donard's like that big grumpy older brother who, well, is much older and doesn't really care about the little kids, his brother and sister. Sylvia, well, she has the maternal role, and Ben was like his dad. And that line of Ben's where home is the last place you were truly happy really hit him because he was never really happy in Threshold, and he's been happy on the road with this sort of surrogate family, and well, one of them's gone. Well, nobody can mope around forever. There's adventures to be had. Life it continues. So what happens next? Everybody is in the inn. And of course, after the big wake that was had, everybody's aware that Ben is dead. But what are our party going to do? We need another fighter. It's obvious they can't go it alone. Liz asks, well, what about these retainers over here? And Donard has spoken to them, and he says no. Those guys have chosen the freedom of the open road to come and go as they please. They may be swords for hire, but they don't want to be part of any group. We just have to, well, hang around until somebody shows up. A lot of people do pass through here, so that's quite likely. Well, how long will that take? Who can tell? It might take a couple of weeks, but that gives us time to do something new. And that is, indeed, some weapon training. And once you hit level 3, you're allowed to find a weapons master who may train you to be better at one weapon, or else pick up a skill in a new weapon. And the keep in the Borderlands has several men-at-arms and captains of the guard, and there's always training in the courtyard. Donard, who thinks this would be beneficial, is going to put himself forward for this, and you would expect Donard to want to train in private. But he suggests that Liz, who can also qualify, joins in and maybe get better training at a bow. She sees the benefit of this. Now why Donard, a loner, wants Liz to join in, well, he doesn't know why. Maybe you and I can guess why. This here is from the Master Rule set, and I am playing the BECMI system. I never owned the Master Rulebook, but it is part of the system. If I were to stick purely to these two, that might be called a BX game. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then BX might also refer to these predecessors, which were brought out a few years earlier. So I don't know if these two are actually BX, but whatever it is, I'm still going to involve the weapons mastery system. It adds something new to the game. I'm not too sure about the rules cyclopedia, because it adds further rules. Okay, well, what is the weapons mastery system? You have a certain level of skill, which is basic or none, and then you can become skilled at it or expert or master. And you have to find a trainer, and the higher the trainer, the easier or the more likely the odds are that you will succeed. We have an expert trainer here. He's been around for some time, and there's a bowswoman who's also an expert. She's going to train Liz. So they both have a 70% chance of succeeding within the 2 weeks, and it's 250 gold per week, and we easily have that money. If they fail, there are 2 options. One is you stop halfway through and you get 250 gold back, or you continue for the whole 2 weeks. You pay the extra 250, but the next time you train, you get a 10% bonus. And I think that's actually definitely worth the money, that extra 10% bonus. But you can't train with the same trainer, you have to wait and move on. Okay, so while Liz and Donard are in the keep courtyard, well, what are Sylvia and Malin going to do for 2 weeks? Well, Sylvia can't stay put for too long. She's under a gesh to not stay put, to wander. So she has to go to the hills, to the north, and without venturing too far, just spend some time in some evenings here in the hillsides, just getting away from what has become home. She feels better for it, and also with her elven woodcraft, she knows how to avoid danger. Malin, well, what does he do? Well, in the evenings or the odd time that Sylvia does come back, they speak together about magic and things, and well, there's not much for Malin to do but really hang around the stables and talk to Mavis the pony and practice his horse riding. Or else he's actually, if Liz can't find him, then he's up by the graves, sitting beside Ben's grave, talking to him. He knows there are spells like Raise Dead, and he is tempted to try and find out more. That kind of shows you just how badly wrong Malin can go. He's extremely intelligent, but he's never had a mentor to discipline his intellect, so his curiosity can become wayward. And, well, maybe morals take a backseat to intellectual curiosity. But anyway, let's roll for our weapons training. And this is Donard's role. He is trained in Warhammer, and he wants to become skilled. And he does. Good. He gets a +2 to hit and damage. And let's see if Liz becomes better at her short bow. And she does as well. Good. That's money and time well spent. She gets a +2 to hit and damage. And I have to say, Donard has not really been impressed with Liz. As far as thieving goes, she hasn't really picked many locks, hidden many shadows or found many traps. And he thinks she's just a bit of a drifter who seems to have grand ideas but no interest in making them real. But he's kind of taken aback or surprised when he discovers that when Liz, who I've said has no real attributes, actually puts her mind to it and somebody takes an interest in her and spends time working with her like her trainer does, that Liz actually is extremely focused and disciplined, and indeed she has become much more accomplished at her short bow. And eventually somebody walks through the doors of the tavern, and it's an old face they've seen before, and well, we'll find out in a minute who it is. Our heroes are talking about what kind of person they would like. Malin says, please make it somebody with experience. We don't want any young people who don't know what they're doing. And Donard says, yeah, we don't want anybody who's too happy. We want somebody who takes this business seriously. And in through the door walks a dwarf they've seen before. It's Carrick. If you remember, Carrick was the dwarf who they used as a retainer to help them through Castle Mistamere, what seems months ago. Well, they recognise each other, and he walks over and says, hi, how are you doing? And they say, what are you doing here? And he says, well, that friend of yours, Ben, when I stayed with him, he went on about this place all the time. Where's the big lunk? And well, everybody sort of looks down at the table, and Donard says he died, and Carrick just nods. Now well, Malin says, are you looking to join a party of people to go adventuring? And Donard says, or are you just a sword for hire? And Carrick says, no, I'm looking for company. And Liz says, oh please, will you join us? And Carrick just says, aye, I think I will. Donard's pleased. He seems to be a dwarf of very few words. Now these are Carrick's stats, I'll put them on the screen. But actually what I'll do is I'll roll for his experience. Okay, that's actually quite high. That's 27. I'm going to say that's 2700s. That's 2700 XP. Okay, that's better than my estimate. He is a sword-wielding dwarf. He wielded a sword when we first met him, and it's kind of nice. I found a picture of a sword-wielding dwarf. Normally they're axe-wielding. Right, if you remember, his stats came from the middle pages of the player's manual, where there are some pre-rolled up characters. And his strength is 16, plus 2 to hit and damage. Intelligence is 7 minus 1. Wisdom, 11, fine. Good dex at 14, plus 1 to AC. And a constitution of 9 and a charisma of 9. Now that constitution doesn't give him any bonuses. I've made him level 2 and I've rolled up 11 hit points for him. So he's going to be quite resistant, but not that durable. He comes with his own plate mail and shield. And well, we have some of Ben's old things. We have a ring, which seems to give him extra protection. That's the ring plus 1. We also have another ring. We haven't worked out what it does, but we know it's magical. And of course there's Ben's sword plus 1. So with all of that equipment together, when we get Carrick onto his feet, he will have a THAC0 of 16, plus 3 to damage, and an AC of 0. He also comes with a crossbow and bolts. Well, Ben had those as well. So it looks like we've found our 5th party member. And we're going to go off to the Caves of Chaos. That's what Carrick's here to do. And we're going to pick a retainer. Now we're not going to pick 2 retainers. This time we probably will when we get to the more difficult caves. But one we haven't picked so far is, well, it's another dwarf. And his name is Coram. Again, these have been nominated by people who subscribe. And Coram described themselves as paternal and nostalgic, and he is another elderly dwarf. When I went through this character sheet here for dwarves, there was one that was called brave and talkative, and one described as cheerful and lazy. I chose the stats for the dwarf who was cheerful and lazy, but I changed his personality. He has a strength of 16, which is good. Wisdom of 15, which is good. Not good dex of 8. A good constitution of 17. And he is level 2 and he has 12 HP. And he is an axe specialist. He has a hand axe and a couple of throwing axes. That means he gets 2 missile attacks. And on the condition that anyone who he hits doesn't run away, he can recover them from the bodies of his fallen foes. Sylvia is an elf. And she's quite happy to have one dwarf. She's not a judgmental person, but 2 dwarves together. It'll be interesting, she thinks to herself. This'll be interesting. So the next day, we have a party together. We paid for 2 more weeks at the inn for all our training. So we've been here for the guts of 3.5 weeks, and it's up to us to go back to the Caves of Chaos. Now previously, according to the rules, it takes you 1 hour on clear land to travel 3 squares, and for every 2 turns I've been checking for wandering monsters. That's been quite a chore and I've done it several times, but I'm going to use the advice of the expert rule set, where you check for midday and then again in the evening. This game says there are no wandering monsters when you're sleeping, but there may be some as we find a campsite. So let's do midday, which is roughly about here. Oh, and there aren't any. That was about to bounce onto that. Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's 10 o'clock in the evening and we have to camp in the hills. Right. And we camp safely. So the next day we make it out to here, and if we look at the Caves of Chaos, the nearest cave, we're going to try this cave here, which is marked as Cave A. Now we've been told that the entrances are trapped. That wasn't the case the first time around, but we're still going to have Liz check for traps. And she doesn't find anything. Right. But Donard advises that, well, we go ahead cautiously. Carrick has taken Ben's quarterstaff and he taps his way forward, checking for anything unusual. He doesn't find anything with his dwarven vision, but he quickly comes across, well, a hollow sound, and this is a really crude trap that's easily seen. It's merely branches covered in dust and gravel to hide a pit. Well, some crude trap here isn't going to fool any dwarf, so we can easily just brush the branches aside, see the pit underneath. And luckily, according to the room description, there are some planks lying nearby that we can put over these in order to cover up the trap. Well, we neutralise this trap by using the planks of wood available. Right now we have our usual, do we go left or do we go right? Let's take a group vote. Whoops. And I should have said 1 to 3 is left and 5 to 6 is right. It's 1 to 3. Carrick is going to have to learn this is how we do things here. So we shutter our lantern, and Liz is going to try and move silently. She fails to move silently, but we're all behind her, and she looks into this room here, room number 2. And we're told there are 18 giant rats here. They're hit dice half each, with 2 hit points each. They can disease us on a rare chance. But behind them, in the corner, is King Rat, who looks larger and more vicious than most. There's no surprise. And we get initiative. Right, well, Liz is going to slink back a bit and tell everybody there's giant rats. We're going to take them on. Donard is motivated to clean this place out, so we have 3 frontliners, 2 dwarves and a cleric. There are some other advantages to the weapons training which I neglected to mention. When you look at the actual weapons charts, it looks like this, and you have to find your weapon on this chart and look for all the different skill levels, what they do: basic, skilled, expert, master, grandmaster. And for skilled, you get a defensive bonus with a warhammer. For the first 2 attacks on you, you get a -2 AC. And for a short bow, you get a -1 on the first attack on you for 1 attack. And then you also get a delay ability. This means if you successfully hit somebody, they have to make a saving throw versus paralysis, or they are partially stunned and lose initiative. let's just get this fight organised, and I'll draw something up and we'll run it. We got initiative. Liz's turn was to start the whole thing off with her failed stealth. Her turn is to retreat. Missile first, then magic. I have been doing magic, then missile. My order of events have been wrong. Right, but we aren't going to do any missile. We're going to do magic. Sylvia is going to magic missile King Rat. And she does 2 damage. It is from 4 down to 2. And Malin is going to cast Sleep into the middle of this room. Right, these are half hit dice monsters, so I don't know, do I double this number? This is the number of hit dice he puts to sleep. And that's 7. Now is that 7 or is that 14? I'll run it with 7, because 14 seems quite OP. Okay, well, I'll pick 7 at random. These are the closest. If this was the centre of the spell, there's 18 rats. I put 3 in each square. Alright, so now it's melee, and Donard is going to put himself forward and attack this one. They have an AC of 7. His Thaco is 16, 1 for strength and 2 for his new skill. And he misses. Right, then we'll have Carrick on this one. And his Thaco is also 16, 1 for his magic weapon and 2 for his strength. And that's AC 9, that's a miss. I'm getting good. And then we have Coram, our new dwarf, who uses a hand axe, which is a rather weak weapon. And he gets +2 as well. And he misses. Okay, well that was a melee disaster. That's their round. So there are 11 left, and there are 3 targets to go for. And Donard is here, so I'll do this one. That's a miss. I'll do this one. And that's a miss. Whoops, that's a miss. And then I'll do these 3. No, well, there's this one. Carrick is here. Coram is here. Carrick is here. I'll do this one on Coram. Okay, that's a miss. I'll do this one on Carrick. That's a miss. Then we have these 3. That one comes forward. That's a miss. This one comes forward. That's a hit. So that's actually 2 points off Coram. And Coram has a 1 in 20 chance of being diseased. He didn't throw a 1. So that's those 2. Then we have this one on Carrick. And that's a miss. And then we have 3 more. That one on Donard. And that's a miss. This one on Donard. 18 hits AC 1. That's a hit, and that does 4 damage. And he isn't poisoned. And then we have King Rat on Donard. That's a miss. And that's a hit. And that does another 3 points. And he isn't poisoned. Right. So we've got 5 rats on Donard, 2 on Carrick, 3 on Coram. That's 10 altogether. There's a rat not accounted for. Now we'll have it on Carrick. And that's a miss. Right. Round 2. And it's mutual initiative. Right. Missile first. Let's do this in order. Sylvia is going to fire at King Rat with a +1 bonus. She misses. Liz is also going to fire at King Rat. And she misses with her +3 bonus. +4 actually. That's still a miss. Then magic. Malin is going to cast another sleep spell. And that takes out 10 of them. Well, that takes them all out. No, it takes them all out apart from King Rat, because he has 2 hit dice. Right. Donard is going to cast Cure Light Wounds on himself. And he's back up to 12. Now let's see what they did in their mutual round. Right. That's a miss. King Rat gets 2 attacks. That's a miss. There are another 4 rats on him. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. There are 3 rats each on Coram and Carrick. Coram, that's a miss. That's a miss. And that's a hit. Okay, Coram is down to 6. 3 on Carrick. That's a miss. It's a miss. And that's a miss. Right. We have round 3. The only one standing is King Rat with 2 HP. And we get initiative. Right, missile. Liz. That weapons training. +1 for dex, +1 for short range, +2 to hit and damage. Her Thaka with a bow. At short range it's 15. She throws a 2. Sylvia. That's 16. She hits AC 3. King Rat has AC 5. She does the 2 damage necessary. It's dead. Now we've got 1 Cure Light Wounds used up. We also have a Staff of Healing. And we're definitely going to use that Staff of Healing on Coram. Whoops. And he gets 3 HP back. He's up to 9. And Donard's going to try it on himself. He's down to 9. And he gets 5 back. Yeah, he's back up to 13. So we've got 1 Cure Light Wounds spell left. And we also have a charge of Staff of Healing for everybody else, apart from Donard and Coram. Okay, now we're going to clean out this room. We're going to search it. And King Rat obviously has some kind of sentient intelligence. We discover that he's wearing a thin silver chain set. Okay. Right, so he's got a matching necklace and earrings. With 5 small gems, jewellery value 400 gold pieces, chain value 50 gold pieces, and each gem worth 50 gold pieces. That's a lot of money and a lot of XP. And after we have raided this room, we're going to rest for a bit. So that's 40 minutes of action. We'll explore the rest of this cave next time.